Welcome to both of you on site and online to this MedFIT session on real-world AI diagnostic tool use cases and strategic by CAIDX. So my name is Karina Østervig Byskov. I'm project manager at the Aalborg University Hospital and also the lead partner on CAIDX. And I have Lars here with me today, who is the president of the European Federation for Medical Informatics. And he will set the scene for today.
Thank you very much. I took my order on today. I don't have the opportunity to wear it so often, and my wife doesn't like me to wear it at home. But why I brought this on is that the European Federation for Medical Informatics will turn 50 years next year. So we've been around for a long time. And therefore I've been following the CAIDX projects. And I've learned a lot from this project, and I'm really super interested of the progress and happy to be a part of those days. I will first talk a little bit about we are talking. And that's one of the key things I have found in the CAIDX project, that you are not just only talking, you are also doing. And as I'm an old man, I used to love other old men. And those two guys here that you probably recognize has been a part of my life for a long time. And you see Platon there pointing to the idle word. And you see Aristotle is pointing and say we have a real word also to be. And for me, this is exactly what we are heading at now. We have a lot of opportunities, but we have also something to do to have it actually to happen. And I think CAIDX will be a part of that transmission. Let's see there. This was an image I created for, I think it's around 10 years ago. And I was talking about the heavy burden in healthcare. And you see a lot of buzzwords here. And you know, buzzwords is words we're using to point upwards. And innovation, creativity, and all these things we have been talking a lot about. And then suddenly, me coming from radiology, I like to see things and I like arts. And I saw the barge howlers on Volga. And suddenly I realized that this is exactly an image of healthcare today. You see that all the workers in healthcare have a heavy burden that they are pulling. For each step they take, they just get closer to the ground. The only thing they have time to do is to shout backwards, come and help me to drag this. We got to be more draggers. But when you look at this image, you realize the first informatician. It's a young guy there, and he's standing, and he has seen something that nobody else has seen. He has seen the steamboat in the horizon. So suddenly he realized that whatever he was doing today, he will not be doing tomorrow. And I guess in this room, it's a lot of people here that have seen the steamboat. And they have problems to explain it for the one that just asked to have somebody else to drag on this. So this is a good image to think about the barge howlers. When I started to reflect over tools and what you have been doing here in CAIDX, I'm quite impressed over the fact that you give out tools for people to move to the steamboat, to start to use things to make a difference. So in a way, we are not only in CAIDX pointing towards what can be done, we are starting to point how it should be done also. And that's an important task that you have brought onto the scene, and I really love to follow that even more.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just briefly gonna present who is CAIDX and who is presenting this today. So CAIDX is a project that has the aim to collaborate between healthcare institutions, so like hospitals and companies, to help development and implementation of AI solutions. So we want to get them into real clinical practice and not just stay in pilot projects. And the reason why we think that we need both of them is because as an end user and as a hospital, which I come from myself, we have the clinical need. We understand what the patient they really need, but at the same time, we need help with the development, the scaling, the commercialization of it. And the other side, we have the companies, the developers that need to understand the clinical need to build solution that is real giving patient impact. And we have all of these barriers. I'm not going to go through them today because we have talked so much about the barriers and the legal, the regulatory, the validation, etc. But what we'll try to do in CAIDX is focus on the solutions. So how can we actually solve the barriers and not only talk about them? And just briefly say, who are we when I'm saying we in CAIDX? So CAIDX is a consortium consisting of 13 partners from 6 different countries. We have business support organization and hospital and universities. And we couldn't have done it without the funding from Interreg Baltic Sea region. So thank you for that support. So what we hope with the program of today is to how can we actually get inspired and get our pilot projects and our prototypes into clinical practice. We're going to do that with presenting our AI toolbox. There's going to be some real use cases from 3 different countries in Europe. Then we're also going to end up talking a bit about the future and have a panel discussion in the end of the day. So the first one I would like to say welcome to is Ida and Laura, who is from Aarhus University Hospital. Their innovation and international affairs that have been a huge part of developing the toolbox.
Thank you very much, Karina. And thank you all for being here today. Laura and I have been looking very much forward to be presenting for all of you guys. So we're going to present the AI toolbox that we've developed together with all of our partners in the project. The toolbox is primarily meant for clinicians who either have an idea for an AI solution for the healthcare sector or have identified a problem where AI might be the solution.
C'est la conférence de Thomas à Strasbourg.
Rien de mieux à faire.
Interesting.
Voilà.
Should I do something or someone else? Oh, yeah. Could you please mute? Great. Thank you. So, yeah, we'll walk you through the tools and give you a tour of our website where you will be able to find these tools. But first and foremost, Karina already gave us an introduction. My name is Ida Lyngholm. I'm a project manager from Aarhus University Hospital, Central Denmark region.
And my name is, I can hear myself. And my name is Laura Emilie Christensen, and I'm also a project manager at Aarhus University Hospital at Central Region, Denmark.
Yeah. So if we were to describe the CAIDX toolbox in 1 minute, it can be boiled down to this. It's a toolbox offering guidance for developing and implementing AI-based diagnostic solutions. It's designed to support and drive the cultural change needed to unfold the potential of AI in the healthcare sector. Karina has already presented all our great partners from the different countries, and well, we're about to finish the project here on December 31st in 2025. So we're also really looking forward to presenting all the hard work that's been done in this project.
Yes. So if we go through the website, we can see up here, and I'm just going to point because the laser won't work on the screen. You can see there's several different sub-pages, which includes the secure data, initiation, implementation, training activities, read also, and the clinical AI pathway guide. And we'll start by introducing the secure data sub-page. So on this subpage, you'll find a handbook summarizing the knowledge on data and cybersecurity in layman terms. So it's designed to guide AI developers and users in reducing the risk of data breaches, raising awareness of some common cyber attacks, and reducing the risk of harm for patients and healthcare systems.
Yeah, so that's the first tool. Second tool, that's project initiation. And project initiation serves as an umbrella with 3 different tools for project initiation. So first, we have the need identification, which you can see on the screen. Second, we have the game plan. And third, the guiding principles for public-private cooperation. And let's just dive right into them.
Yeah, as you can see here, the first tool on the initiation subpage is the need identification. And this is designed for clinicians and researchers to help define the clinical need and also its intended solutions.
Yeah. And the second tool is the game plan. And this tool can help clinicians and researchers plan and structure an AI innovation project.
And the last tool, as Ida mentioned, is this guiding principles for public-private corporations. And it's to support clinicians and researchers when entering a cooperation agreement with an external party, such as a private company.
Yeah. So moving on, the third subpage is our implementation subpage. And under this subpage, you'll find knowledge about implementation and change management in AI solutions. So it's a framework for implementation managers responsible for integrating AI solutions in clinical settings. And we've made this to help and manage the hidden human factors and influence AI implementation and ensure a more effective adoption process into the clinic. Yeah.
And the fourth subpage is the training activities, as you can see here. And here you can find a webinar series focusing on central pain points and opportunities in development of AI diagnostic solutions, which is developed to help overcome barriers and unlock the potential of AI in diagnostics by sharing expert knowledge and addressing key challenges.
And the fifth subpage is our Read Also subpage. And here you'll find all the CAIDX project documents and external resources that's been gathered through the development of the CAIDX project, but also during the project period.
And now we've come to the last subpage, which is the Clinical AI Pathway Guide. And it's a practical and structured guide designed to support healthcare professionals, researchers, and/or companies when developing and implementation of these AI solutions. And as you can see here, we have also tried to make an iterative process model to showcase that this process is not linear, but is like an iterative process. So it's to get an overview of each of these stages that we'll get into. So when you click on this page, you'll get down to the guide we have made. And here you can see that it's divided into 6 different stages, from idea to deployment. And each stage is aligned to a specific TRL level, technology readiness level. Each stage also includes an introduction and an expected outcome for the stage, guiding the user on to what to achieve at that stage with their AI solution. So developing an AI solution is an iterative process, as I just mentioned. So the guide should not be used as a checklist, but rather be used as a support throughout the AI development process in the healthcare system.
Yeah. So if we take a look at it here on the screen, I hope that you're able to see it down here. You'll see that you'll find several tasks to be completed, which has been identified through 13 different piloting cases across the 6 different countries that are contributing to the CAIDX project.
And as you can see above these tasks, there is a filter topics by stakeholder option where you can choose to select different stakeholders. So here we have pressed on the data engineer. So the tasks for which the stakeholders are either primary or secondary will then be highlighted on the website for an easy overview of when to engage the different stakeholders.
And then when you click on one of the tasks here, you'll see this open up, where first and foremost, you'll see the primary and secondary stakeholders that Laura talked about before. Apart from that, you'll also see the action expected to be done in relation to this task. In some of the tasks, there's also sort of a time estimate of how long this task should take. And then last but not least, we have our available internal material and external material. So the internal material is, as I told before, the material that's been developed in the CAIDX project. And the available external material has been gathered for the ones who want to dive in even deeper.
Yeah, so this was a short introduction to the clinicalai.eu website created by the CAIDX team.
And last but not least, we also want to give it up for all of our partners in the CAIDX project who've been working together to develop this toolbox for clinicians to use across Europe if they have an idea or have identified a problem where AI might be the solution. So thank you all for your attention and thank you for having us.
I don't know if there's any questions before, because we actually have some time I can see on the agenda. No, but then I thought, yes.
In developing the clinical AI pathway guide. Yeah. That's a good question. So oh yeah, sorry. So the question was if any of the piloting cases has developed into something that's actually been implemented into the clinical setting. So from my knowledge, it's only a very few that has come that far because it's a long process. And if we had dive in more into the guide, you'd also see it's a very extensive process to develop an AI algorithm for the healthcare sector. There's a lot of things that needs to be taken into account. But I don't know, Karina, if you have more knowledge about that.
Yeah, so a bit as was Ida said, we only had like a half a year where we did the piloting, so not a lot of things actually happened, but we have tried to find use cases in different phases. So both have some in the early and some in the later phases to actually make sure this implementation. Some was self-developed and some was procured in. So they have moved away, but I'll not say in this 1 year that they have actually moved the whole way. But instead, we have tried to find use cases in different phases from idea to deployment instead to come. Yeah, instead.
And I don't think we could expect that from them either, because it's a long process and you need to get your things straight. Yeah.
Lars, did you have a question?
Oh yeah.
No, thank you for the presentation. I have a question to Aarhus University Hospital. Are you using these tools now when you are doing procurement or innovation parts with the candidates? Yeah.
Yeah. So we just finished the CAIDX toolbox. The next big step for us is to spread the word and the knowledge about this CAIDX toolbox. And we're actually starting that on Thursday with a lot of innovation managers. We're having a workshop with them where we're presenting the tools so that they can take them out and use them with the clinicians. So not yet, because we finished in the summer, but hopefully in a year or so, we'll see some start using the CAIDX tools.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just like to brag about Aalborg then, because I'll actually say that we have come a long way in the last half year. So we have tried to make like a Region North guide out of it, with the legal, the IT department, the regulatory department, the data scientists. So all of these fill a function. So we are actually starting to make a guide special for us with all the experts and all the governance structure into that. So it's not completely 100 finished now, but I'll say a half a year we have really reached out and starting to use that in our everyday clinical practice now. So it's coming.
And I think, Karina, that's a really good example of what CAIDX also should be. It should also be inspiration for someone to take it into their own organization and into their own departments and start using their tools in a specific matter that actually, like, with the right contact persons, just like Karina said, so that it's more context, near the context, actually. Yeah. So hopefully will serve as inspiration for that.
Thank you. I'm sure that also in other parts of the world, hospitals are reflecting, thinking on how to integrate AI solutions. Have you contact, maybe a question also to Karina or the other colleagues, to initiatives in Canada, in the US, in Japan, or elsewhere? And if so, what, in your opinion, is typical European, or what is a distinction to this likely initiatives elsewhere in the world? Do you know about that?
I know that we have actually started to have contact with Canada. We have a meeting, I think, in 2 weeks, just before Christmas, with a university hospital in Toronto. And they have a different, they're faster than us, so to say, because I think our thing we have in Denmark, we think research, we think articles, we think PhD, and they've been much faster in just thinking in the everyday life and not making everything to a big research project. So we like to learn from how they have done it in Canada, not to say that it needs to be in the exact same way, but we are trying to get inspired by. So that is in Canada. Hopefully we can get some inspiration because they have done it in a different, more faster way. And you know, with AI, everything is going fast. So if you need to do research for 3 years, it's someone else might already had come across you. So we're starting in Aalborg. Thomas?
Yep, maybe I can add, we have also done a literature research about frameworks, and there are a lot of frameworks out there. However, not so many about implementation. Actually, I found a lot of frameworks, for instance, for ethical considerations, so ethical frameworks for trustworthy AI, frameworks for reporting AI research, which we all have in our read also list, but very few actually about implementation, and especially the perspective that we had from a kind of technology transfer perspective from the clinical and the startup view. That is, I have not come across, but there might be something out there, but at least to my knowledge, this perspective is not so much covered.
Okay. So I think last question, but
yes, and then I'm also curious. Now you worked throughout 6 different countries, and I imagine that we are at different stages. So what has been your experience like going across 6 countries with AI and hospitals?
I actually, from the use cases that we've seen, it's not related to which country you're in. It's related to the hospital or the region you're in, and related to how eager your own organization is to move forward with the AI agenda. So from the data we've looked into, I actually think we've been quite well represented with AI projects from different countries who are at different stages. And that's also something that we here in Denmark definitely have learned a lot from, being able to have colleagues across Europe to spare with about the AI and opening up our horizon.
Yeah, so just to also say, it's more been about the people. Do you have a local champion that really works for this? Because that can also affect the whole organization on if you want to work on it. So just so much about the region and the people in the hospital. Of course, there was some difference, but it's not been anything big, I will say, to my knowledge. But thank you, Ida and Laura. Yes, and now we come to the use cases across Europe. So the first one, Kalle from Jeppe from Finland will come and present his Finnish use case about speech recognition. So welcome, Kalle.
Thank you. Good morning. Let's test some things. Okay. Yeah, I'm here from Finland to present you an ambient listening AI case from Varha in social care services. So it's not a hospital. You might be asking why, but I'll come to that soon. I had 20 minutes, right? Including discussion. Okay. So what we did this year, we piloted this ambient listening AI solution in our social care services. In this client meeting recording with 15,000 recordings, we found that it saves a little bit of time, but it also enables our professionals to better meet the clients. So it's kind of a win-win in efficiency and quality, but let's say it's still developing. I will discuss a little bit about the context where we're operating in and AI in Varha in general, and then this project in further detail, the case, and then reflect this project into the CAIDX guide. So, hey all, I'm Kalle Järppe. I work as a development manager at Varha. My domain is the digital services and our AI projects that are, it's pretty broad scope, but well, it's a large organization also. As a side business, I do doctoral research in University of Turku. So the context and why we are doing social care services in the hospital context is that Varha is the well-being services county of Southwest Finland, aka Varsinais-Suomen hyvinvointialue, aka Varha. It's a mouthful. We have been operating since 23. We had this huge social and healthcare reform where we built 22 counties plus the capital health the hospital district. Varha is one of these. We serve 500,000 about inhabitants, and the responsibility is all our social care and all our healthcare, including hospital services and the rescue department. The pride of Varha is TYKS, the Turku University Hospital, and this hospital serves also our well-being services county and the neighboring counties in special cases, and we do research in there. So I'm not going to read all of this text, but some context about the financing situation. Since 23, we have been, let's say, we get at the $2 billion from euros from the government to fund our services, and our goal is to cut this a lot, and we have to save a lot of money in the next few years. But basically, the nation funds our district. Most of the money goes to salaries, wages, and emoluments. That's a weird word, but basically we pay people to work for us. That's most of it. And then we purchase services. The IT budget is about 100 million euros a year. And if you look at this graph, you can see that if we can use AI to reduce human work, it saves quite a bit of like percentage-wise of our costs if we can use less human work for something. And the context also is that while we have to save money, the need for services is getting larger, that the population is getting older and needs more services. So we have to be more efficient. Our personal breakdown, the hospital services are like 2/3 of this, and then the basic healthcare and social services are about a quarter. A lot of it also is specifically focused on services to the elderly people. But this is the context. A large organization, new organization, fragmented systems, and the cost-cutting pressure. Then we get to AI. Our IT strategy in the last 2 to 3 years has been to consolidate our systems. When all of these different counties became one healthcare district, we have to consolidate all our systems. So that has been the main thing. And we have invested in digital services to serve equally everybody digitally and cutting costs by many millions a year. So where do we fit AI into this with very little budget? But we have been able to make pilots. TYKS, the university hospital, has a tradition of using AI in research, especially in diagnostics, imaging and such. But when you take the larger context of all our social and basic healthcare, it's much less. But in this, we had a nationwide mapping of AI projects, and Varha was number one in the amount of projects because we counted the research projects in there as well. But in these 2 years of our operation, we have joined the national networks, projects like CAIDX. We have defined some principles, how do we use and deploy AI, and we have tried to find the use cases that validate that we can find and validate to be efficient. So about a dozen projects, if we don't count the research projects, and this particular ambient listening is one of these. Okay, now we get to the actual topic at hand. So ambient listening, I'm not sure how common this term is. Maybe in the last 2 years, it's been there's a market for these kind of solutions. But the goal is that an AI is listening to a client meeting. It can be an appointment with healthcare in healthcare or in our case social services. And the AI after the meeting compiles the meeting into this structured recording. It's not just speech recognition or just writing text. It's about actually intelligently summarizing the points of the discussion. The AI must understand the content of the meeting. It cannot just type words because it has to. The meeting is not structured in a certain way. They can discuss anything. It has to drop irrelevant things out of the recording. But in the end, the professional themselves validate and is responsible for the final text that we put in the EHR system. So the context for that is that anything we do in our services, we have to record it. And there are many different templates for different kinds of meetings and decisions and such in social care. Now, here's an example. I did not translate it, but I'm just trying to illustrate the idea that there are some different kinds of topics, like what services this person has had, what's the growing environment of a child, or their well-being status. And all of these things have to be identified from this free-form conversation.
Could you elaborate a little bit what is exactly the time savings?
Yes.
Where do they save the time, so to speak?
Yes. Like the traditional workflow is that you have a meeting, maybe you take some notes on a paper, and afterwards you spend 15 minutes compiling it into the recording. And with this the tool, AI tool, you spend maybe 5 minutes compiling the recording, that the AI does the first draft for you, and you maybe fix it. And of course, like validate it.
I saw Thomas also just have a question, so we take the question now while the technology is working.
Thanks for the nice presentation. Are there any regulatory requirements for AI or ambient listening?
Oh, yes, of course. Like AI action, MDR does not apply in social services, and if we were to use this in healthcare, we would have to decide, is this within MDR? Some people have argued it's not, but in AI Act we have said it's not a high risk system because there's the human in the loop and they can validate every step of the way. But otherwise, of course, we have the like information security requirements and such, and that is in GDPR's perspective, we do not use consent as the basis for processing, but we ask consent like for to make the meetings go nicer. So the professionals ask that, is it okay that I use this, and also inform the client, but it's not like the legal basis. Okay, this clicker is not again working. Yeah. So how much longer can I spend?
Yeah, if
Okay, 5 minutes. I can do this in 1 more minute as well. So I'm sure you're seeing this picture is from the CAIDX guide, the change management iceberg. I would say this project was like on the easier side, that maybe the project management was 50% and change management was 50%, because the people were so excited to get the tool to use in their daily work. Oh, it's a different presentation.
yes.
Okay.
So you got a sneak peek for the next one. I could see there was some questions, but thank you, Kalle. Lutz, did you have a...
I'm quite interested in the idea of ambient listening. It's somehow enlarging the perspective towards the systems approach, in my opinion. And do you have any selection criteria? Ambient can be, in my opinion, everything. Yeah. So you have to prioritize, in my idea. And what are selection criteria for you? First or more important ambient aspects, middle or lower ambient aspects. Otherwise, you have to regard everything, and that's not possible.
If I understood exactly what you're trying to like convey to me, maybe how did we prioritize the use cases that we use the ambient listening in? At first, the first deployment was about speed, that what we can in the fastest way get to production to test the system at all. And from there, we start working on those that like meetings and decision templates that take a lot of time from the professionals, or they are made a lot. So it's kind of a simple cost benefit analysis in that sense.
We actually have a... No, so we also have a online question afterwards.
Sure, go ahead.
So the question from Johan Bergstrand. What was the name of the ambient client you used or developed you in-house? So was it self-developed or procured, and what was the name?
It's Gosta Labs. I'm not sure I can pronounce it well in English, but it's Gosta.
Gosta Labs. Yeah.
And yes, it's a service provider who provides this to Varha as a service, but it's also a cooperation, like partnership, co-development in that sense, that it's a tight feedback loop.
Great, but thank you, Kalle, for your presentation. And
thank you.
Yes. So it's good to have IT people with us when the IT is, can be a bit tricky and when we talk about AI. So the next project which you got a sneak peek on is Sophus is a Danish use case, which Ulrik Espelund will come and present. So welcome, Ulrik.
Thank you. Thanks for the CAIDX team for the opportunity to present, even though I'm not officially part of the CAIDX project. The Sophus project is about finding patients with organ failure and sepsis among hospitalized patients. And you use a kind of AI called explainable AI that can actually give explanations to the clinicians using it. Well, who am I? Well, my name is Dea. I'm a consultant anesthesiologist and associate professor. But first and foremost, I'm a doctor, and I work with critical ill and injured patients in every department of my hospital and in the pre-hospital setting as well. Could look like this. So this lady, she needs help. She is critically ill, and my job is to support her vital organs in order to help her survive. It could look like this, a lot of people, and I'm in charge of taking care of her heart, lungs, kidneys, fluid balance. So why do people become critically ill and come to me? Well, often it is an infection that causes the critical disease, and this combination of infection and organ failure is called sepsis. Let me give you the story of Mac Horsberg. Mac, he had a swollen finger. So he went to his doctor and he received some antibiotic pills. Unfortunately, this infection progressed and eventually he caught sepsis. But the early signs of sepsis, they were missed. So Mac, he got very ill and he almost died. He spent 3 weeks in the ICU in full organ support. So the question is, was it just bad luck for Mac? Well, not quite. We know that if we could have identified his condition early, started treatment earlier, probably he would not have been that ill. We could have mitigated or prevented his disease. And is this case unique? Is Mac alone? No, he's not. We have 49 million cases of sepsis each year, and the costs, the economic costs and the human costs are tremendous. So clearly there are several good reasons to improve sepsis care. So we have developed a solution called Sophus, and basically it's just an app for doctors and nurses that will send them a notification whenever a patient is at risk. And I'll just briefly touch upon the stepping stones that we have passed in order to implement Sophus. First of all, we have published models. So it's a research-based model. We have put this model into a product in a multidisciplinary fashion with doctors, nurses, programmers, data scientists to make it work in real life. We have engaged in a public-private partnership with a company, so we help each other fix this. And we have a very dedicated research team, as you can see. And we're planning on doing an RCT of 50,000 patients to document the effects of this solution. And we have something with data access. We've obtained real-time data access to actually make this work. But I think while we've been waiting quite a lot for these data. We've been waiting for 7 years to get the data to make it work. So that's been a huge barrier because of our institution has not been very mature in handling data access in real time. So we worked very closely together with them. And I'll share with you some of the insights that we've gained. So this could be a healthcare worker, a doctor or a nurse. They will interact with the EHR system. And whenever they put in data, it would be nice if the data was to be found in the central data warehouse. But that's not the case. Instead, the EHR communicates with several distinct systems. And each of these systems has its own structure. Some of them are with easy access. Some of them are very difficult to access. And each of these systems within the IT department, they would have their own boss and they would have their own office. So that's very difficult to make anything work there. And then once every day, and only once, data will be transferred to this central data warehouse. And that gives a delay of data of around between 18 and 42 hours. And if you have a project that wants to help patients here and now, where every hour matters, it's simply not good enough to work with for a digital solution. So we had to build new pathways. A data transit center, we bought a very expensive connection to the EHR to EHR vendor to get the data in real time, and we can then push the data directly to our own services at the project, where we do the magic and send back the data to our institution directly into the pockets of the doctor and nurse. So the EHR looks very simple and nice on the front, but on the back, it's very complicated. In fact, it's a mess. But if you want to work with data in real time, you'll have to tangle out all of this mess to make it work. So the system we've built is also complex, but not as complex as our institution setup. But I'll show you just the nice part here. This is the part of Sophos that the doctor and nurse will interact with. So, as mentioned, the doctor and nurse will receive a notification on their phone. There's a risk patient. And when they open up the risk patient, they will see a list of risk patients with a new one on top. They can then open up the patient and see what data were available for this patient, and how are the values compared to the normal range. And further, the doctor and nurse can also discuss with the algorithm. It can see what features of the patient were most important to the prediction. By opening up the prediction itself, the model can give an explanation as to why the patient is at risk. So what's next? We would very much like to show that this matters for the patient. So we have come up with an ambitious research plan, because we have had dialogues with doctors and nurses, healthcare leaders, and funding bodies. And they all find that clinical research to document effects for the patient, that's very important. So we want to use research as a catapult to move Sophos forward. We're looking at the ability to support clinicians, the ability to improve patient prognosis, like reduce the length of stay, reduce the need of intensive care, reduce mortality. So we want to make the patient survive more. We're looking at the needs of care post-discharge, and we're looking at healthcare economy. So I really believe that this solution will be able to help the lady in the bed. So to sum up, we've come up with an idea. We've co-developed it in a public-private partnership. We've implemented it just within the last 4 weeks, and we're now aiming at measuring the effects on patients and the organization. And we are open to business, and we're open to academic collaboration. So if you want to have Sophus come visit you, please reach out. Thank you.
Janos.
Yes, thank you. This is impressive. Just want to ask if we are speaking about risks, then it's usually extremely difficult to measure. Actually, if the risk will not materialize, how you know that it didn't materialize, and so how you are going to measure this impact and clinical validation and validate it clinically. So it would be interesting to hear.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We have a multi-tier scientific setup. So, but the cornerstone is a randomized setup where on some admission dates you will have the Sophus system active, and on some admission days you will not have the Sophus system active. So you will have 2 groups running simultaneously, and for some patients the clinicians will have this system available, and for other patients the system will not be available. So that's a head-to-head comparison during the same time period. But that's also very hard to create that kind of evidence. So we're also doing more classical before and after studies. So the first thing that we will produce will be before and after studies, and then we'll move on to the randomized setup.
Stefan Jovinge. I'm from Skåne University Hospital. I'm an intensive care cardiologist. So often you presented here that, by the way, a wonderful tool. My compliments to that tool. It looks really good. But you presented that an alarm list of values, and if you're off list. From my experience from intensive care, is as important are trends. So even if values are normal, the trends are alarming. Do you have that as part of your algorithm and your warning system?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So what we are showing to the clinicians is the latest value, because that is what the language they know.
Yeah.
And the normal reference ratings that they know. But the algorithm will look at both the actual value and the trends, and they will look for patterns between these measurements.
Yeah.
So it's both the value and the trend.
Yeah, it depends on your EMR system, but the most modern systems will let you have trends as well. And in our case, we that's the key for the clinician as well. But wonderful tool, I must say. We also have, with a collaboration with Canadian friends at Unity Health, learned how to silent test systems, that you have them running and look how did they do without clinicians before we introduce it to the clinician. Seems like a wonderful model of testing as well.
Yeah. And to comment on that, we're planning on doing that, but it's very difficult to do a silent test in the first center, because we've put something, we've implemented something, and we're doing small changes now. But the next big center we're adding, we will do a silent test, a silent phase first, and then we'll go to the active phase afterwards, because I agree with you, it's a very nice design.
No more questions and no one online? No. But then thank you, Ulrik, for your time. And then the last use case, we thought now we were in Strasbourg, we should have a local use case with us today. So Erik and all have been so nice and present the use case here from Strasbourg. So welcome, Erik.
Thank you, Karina. Hello. My name is Eric Null. I'm also an anesthesiologist. I'm working here in Strasbourg University Hospital. I'm a clinician and also involved in some research project. So these are my conflict of interest. And so my talk will be about patient-centered decision support for perioperative pain management. Just to put that in context, pain management for surgical intervention is a health priority concern because of the global volume of surgery. You know that more than 300 million surgical interventions are performed worldwide each year. In France, it's more than 10 millions. And that for these surgeries, post-operative pain management can be highly challenging and can be related to pain medication-related iatrogenia. Just to put that in context, this is a study in North America. The author followed a patient that underwent surgery for 7 days after surgery and tried to make pattern clustering regarding the pain confront during the first postoperative week, and then classified patients regarding the pain score into different category of results and pain management results. And as you can see, only a very few percentage of these patients had a global efficacy of the pain management strategy with no pain during the first postoperative week. And I am quite confident with the external validity of this study, because if we did the same study in Strasbourg, I think we could have some comparable results. We are still in need to improve the way we manage postoperative pain following lots of surgery. And the problem is not the level of evidence. We know how to make good clinical practice regarding pain management following surgery. In France, we have lots of guidelines summarizing the evidence. Globally, we know that we have to screen for challenging case, for high-risk patients, for difficult perioperative pain management. Surgeons have to decrease invasivity. We have to implement multimodal analgesia, which aims at, in fine, to reduce opioids administration and to just limit opioids to the minimum effective dose for postoperative pain management. In fact, we know that there is a high public health crisis with epidemic, and especially in North America with the opioid epidemics, and that healthcare prescribed opioids contribute to this opioid crisis, and that the burden of this opioid crisis is very impacting lots of countries. So to summarize, the challenge we face in postoperative pain management is that healthcare professionals have to face conflicting demands. They have to improve postoperative pain control, and we have seen that the results are today not ideal. And also we have to limit the use of the most potent pain medications, opioids. How do we manage this challenge in everyday practice in the hospital? So when a patient has been on the surgery, is at postoperative day 1, for example, and we told him, if you feel pain, you have to call the nurse and ask for a rescue medication, and the nurse will do something. So when the patient do it, he asks for the nurse help. What is happening? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't click the right button. So he called the nurse. The nurse has to get the information that the patient is asking for her. She gets to the patient, see what's the issue, what's the patient demands, and if it's a pain problem, she will get back to the electronic health record, check the doctor's prescription. Then if it's time for a rescue pain medication like an opioid, she will get to the pharmacy, get the pain medication, go back to the patient, give the pain to the patient, and get back again to the central part of the ward to record the administration of this rescue medication. And I don't know how it is in your institution, but in Strasbourg, for a single surgical unique ward with 28 beds, there is 1 nurse overnight. So every patient asks sometimes several times for such demand. There are admissions, There are safety consultation, for example, for sepsis. So lots of work for the healthcare professional, and we are not very reactive in giving this rescue pain medication. So our InsaMed project, the one I'm talking with you today, aims at mimicking this whole process and giving patients some control on their pain medication, and also to identify directly with the patient the optimal component of the multimodal analgesia that will be adapted to the patient and in any situation, sometimes to give advice and sometimes to deliver opioids if it's the right time. It is the project to design and build up an intelligent medication dispenser that can interact directly with the patient. So the first step we have to face in this project is to build up a human-machine interface that relies on the computer patient-centered clinical decision support system to get all the process we discussed earlier into one software that could get the demand, check that the demand corresponds to a step in the multimodal analgesia protocol, and if it's time to have a rescue therapy like opioids, to check that it's safe to deliver it at this time, and if it's the case, to open access to this delivery. So we build up a software that is designed as a clinical computerized patient-centered clinical decision support system with a simple interface where the nurse could implement the doctor's prescription regarding postoperative pain control. Then the patient could interact with this software, ask for pain help, response some very simple question, and the response is closed. You don't get text, you just say yes or no to very simple question. And based on logical rules, this patient decision support system may or not allow in fine to opioids delivery. So we had to make a choice when we were in the first step of designing this human-machine interface system. Should we go for a very high-end, sophisticated AI a tool like, for example, LLM, or just keep to a logic-based, very simple, knowledge-based clinical decision support system? There are pros and cons. For the LLM, the advantages was that it's very creative, it's reassuring, it's human-like responses. There can be multiple inputs from the patients. The drawback is that it's very vague. It's not really predictable in the sense we want when we want to give the system the ability to deliver opioids. It requires live internet connection in most of the available tools. On the other hand, a logic-based, knowledge-based clinical decision support system are way more simple. They are operant, they are predictable, and they work with no internet connection at all. The drawbacks are that they are more austere. They are complex to interface with the patient. The patient has to be able to get along with this knowledge-based clinical decision support system, and we have to be able to implement our best knowledge about the evidence-based medicine of perioperative pain management into this logic rule-based software. So just to illustrate, I'm sorry, it's in French, but at this time, some years ago, we were asking ChatGPT just to help in a simulated case. I've been under surgery for TKA, total arthroplasty. I have pain, what should I do? And the LLM give a very careful response, very reassuring, very safe, saying this is a very serious condition, you should check with your prescription, and if it's not sufficient, then you should ask for more help. So it's very safe, it's interesting, but it's not operating to be into a system that would, in fine, maybe allow for drug delivery. So we were for our knowledge-based computerized patient clinical decision support system with simple logical rules, and we try to confirm that in a proof of concept study with a real patient after surgery that it's feasible to use and that the response that it will give are safe and corresponds of what we would like him, the device to say. So we made a clinical trials with a patient included before surgery, and we give the device to the patient after surgery. It was only the software. It was not connected on pill dispensers, only to test the software to see if patient could interact with it after surgery when they are tired and sometimes with pain in comfort, if they could understand the questions. And at the end, when the device emitted a recommendation, then there was an alert to our research nurse who came, interviewed the patient, and checked if the recommendation was in accordance with what we have programmed, what we would have wanted. But there was no impact on the patient management. Patients were treated as usual care. The nurse in charge of the patient had to ignore the device recommendation. And so we could see that it was quite operant, feasible, and reliable in terms of agreement between the device recommendation and what we would have expected to the device to recommend. So it was a 94% of agreement. So it was quite reliable. And it was also interesting to see that despite the patient having the device only during daytime, there was a lot of interactions between the patient and the device in a time period which would have expected the patient to be tired and not so available to interact, and still they did. They were also quite satisfied with the interaction they had with the device, so we are confident that we could continue the process of developing this intelligent pain medication dispenser. So the good surprise for us was that the high interaction rate between the patient and the device, because we are sometimes trying some electronical device for perioperative management. A lot of time patient doesn't really want to interact. They want to stay calm and just to recover. But with this device, the important point is that they know that the device may help them in improving their situation by giving them advice regarding, for example, symptoms like pain. So now we are moving forward. We are trying to construct the hardware of this intelligent pain dispenser to integrate our human-machine interface and to be able, in fine, in some few months and years ago, to compare usual care and patient-controlled oral multimodal analgesia based on our device that we are developing. So in conclusion, our patient-centered clinical decision support system for postoperative rescue analgesic treatment seems to be feasible and reliable. We are now working on the global intelligent pill dispenser, integrating this human-machine interface into the real global hardware, and it's currently in development. And really happy to discuss with you about this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I like the way you have brought evidence into this also. When you talk about the next step to connect to the dispensers, are you going to follow some standards or thinking of that so it can be faster implemented in other countries also?
So we will we try to follow the same steps by validating by design the template for getting your package to use as a clinical, as a medical device. So in France, it can be surprising, but it's not considered as a medical device because it's a pain medication dispenser. It's a different regulatory, but we want to develop as if it is a medical device, because as clinicians, we are very concerned that it will deliver at the end opioids. So we will try to by design to follow all the steps to have the same level of safety before even going into clinical research to validate that we have the same results with the full hardware device connected with the human-machine interface that we have in terms of reliability of the response with only the software. So we know that we have some months and years ahead before being able to really challenge the device with a clinical trial.
Thanks, Eric. Very interesting. It looks as if you have more than one outcome, both pain and ileus and nausea and vomiting. Is that correct?
Yes, the human machine interface has 3 symptoms in input. The patient can interact with the device for pain issue, for nausea issue, or ileus issue. And as you know, all 3 are correlated with the opioid side effects. And it's important for the device, and it's integrated inside the algorithm, that if the patient, for example, asks for help with nausea, and the device knows that the patient has requested some help with pain like 2 hours ago, then it will know that probably there is an interaction between both symptoms on the device in terms of advice. We also check, after having given advice for the nausea management, that the patient is following a full multimodal strategy to decrease opioids, which is probably the etiology of the nausea. So yes, different inputs and connections in terms of algorithm between these inputs.
Thanks. Very interesting. How did you develop the algorithm? Did you have data to train the model, or how did you do that?
So the algorithm is quite simple. It's not deep learning or very sophisticated code. It's just rule-based, if-then algorithm based on the recommendations of good clinical practice. So the algorithm is simple, and we wanted it to be simple because as the end output of the algorithm is to authorize or not opioids, we want to be crystal clear that we know in which situation the algorithm is delivered. So really it's a if-then based algorithm, very simple.
Okay, so it's rule based, not AI.
Yes, it's rule based for the algorithm. Yes, it's not an AI based inference algorithm. However, the aim of the global technology is to replace the human intelligence of the nurse. It's a clinical decision support system. So the challenge is really on the high end of the product, which is delivering opioids in place of a nurse.
So the human machine interface, is that because you showed this LLM, could that be maybe somehow an LLM somehow do conversation with the patient or something like that?
We could add an LLM as an interface tool, but when we decided not to do it, it's because we were very concerned that there is an element of uncertainty if you add a tool in between patient input and the inference system who will say I authorize or not opioids. So it could be maybe more easy to use, but it induces uncertainty regarding the whole process.
Okay, thanks.
We also have, with the increasing number of patients to treat, we also get more patient injuries, not only creating more problems for the patient, but also for the healthcare system. And I can say, and that last challenge Doesn't really work as planned. So the last, and last not least, we are impacted by sudden impacts all the time. In our case, with patients from Ukraine suddenly coming, but also COVID, we need to be able to be flexible and redistribute. And all these taken together would make us to feel helpless and be in despair. But this is one of the key arguments why we should not only do AI products, but actually convert into the AI society completely. There are a lot of projects in our center, and they are mainly in areas of image analysis. So you probably know about the Masai study on 100,000 women, which proved that a radiologist, if being aided by a robot rather than another radiologist, will detect 30% more cancers without any more significant number of false positives. And also that the difference between the robot and the human and the advantage of the robot is strongest in the most malignant cases. So that's a typical case where if you see this diagram with more expensively, lesser expensive, better, and worse and better, you will be in the quadrant of less expensive and better. So in care management is another key areas where we have actually proven in many solutions. I think what was presented here about sepsis is one case. We have an intensive care algorithm to predict cases that could be discharged from critical care within 72 hours. And in the profit system, and as we have, it's hard to move patients, but if you give a 3-day notice, you will be able to move the patients when needed. And another example is that's an in-house algorithm where you actually have oncology planning for the treatment with an oncologist and a physicist. Takes 1.5 hours, but we now have an algorithm which will do it in 1.5 minutes. Things like that are good examples. We also for intensive care, we know as intensivists certain parameters which will be a risk of going into shock. But still, if we know these, everyone in intensive care knows that even if not on a daily basis, but quite often people go into shock without anyone being able to predict that. But we have shown that with an algorithm that will find patterns which are highly predicted, even if there are very subtle changes on each part, which we don't react to. The algorithm can help you to aid that in that matter. But all these projects are based on local data, limited data sets. And it's been shown that we can do that. The key, of course, with AI, you can have wonderful processors, graphical cards, and parallel and supercomputers, but it's all about the data you get in. And everyone knows that the predictive power or the power of finding complex relationships of AI is a blessing, but it's also a curse in the sense that AI is easily misled. If you feed it with biased data, it will build that bias into the algorithm. And then, of course, always a matter of integrity. But I will say, when it comes to in our work, we only work on pseudonymized data. So the level of safety of the data we work on is well beyond what the EMRs are. They're much less safe to the for the integrity. The problem we in Europe run into is, of course, GDPR. And I've been setting up data lakes in US for 10 years, and there is a major difference in the attitude. So the key when you work with patient data in Europe is consent. That's the turning point in Europe. In US, it's integrity protection. And how does that differ? Yeah, if you show that it's properly pseudonymized, you have an honest broker keeping the key and so on, and you get that approved, the patient doesn't own the data. The values that come out, that's non-human subject data. So if I have a blood pressure of 125/75, that's my integrity. No one can touch it without my consent. But the value 125/75, I don't own. And that's how you can get access to complete data sets. The problem with having consent is that, of course, that will create a double problem. So when you work with AI, generally you know that you have a risk of having underfit data if you have a too small data set, for instance, or that you overfit your training because your data is somewhat biased to the real life population. And actually, if you have consent, you will run into both risks. You will reduce your data set, giving you a risk of underfitting data, but that data set, we know that if you only run on consented data, that will be biased. So that will not be applicable. So this is something we need to get around. And you can, of course, anonymize. Problem is that then you have your data set fixed, or you can pseudonymize with a key, and then you have a mechanism how to protect the key. In US, that's done, and in our system, it's done with the honest broker. So the law is GDPR, but Article 9.2 is something that's very rarely discussed, which actually opens up for the necessity principle, which is rarely used, but it is already an open door in the GDPR. When it comes to data sharing, we have the EHDS. It's already in effect, but in August 2027, we should be able to share data for primary use already. And this is the big thing right now. Everyone tries to adopt to be able to share. But the key in EHDS is there are 4 information accesses needed to be compliant with. The individuals and the providers who would get full access to data, and the systems and makers and regulators and innovators, researchers that should get access for the secondary use and pseudonymized data. And we just need to comply for that. When it comes to AI directive, that has been a tipping point too, because the first assumption or the conclusion in the AI directive is that there is a risk. When we started our AI journey, I often got from our lawyers and regulators that you cannot do this because there is a risk. There is a risk that something could leak out. But there's always a risk. So I'm a life science advisor to the Swedish government, and when the ministers hear me talk, they confront me with a question: can you guarantee that there will be no leakage? And my response to that is, yes, I can guarantee that there will be a leakage. We just needed to keep it as low as possible. 280 people die in traffic accidents in Sweden every year. I do not argue to close all traffic down. We just need to embrace risk and make it reduce as much as possible. And the AI Act actually structuralize it that there is a different regulatory set for the level of risk. Minimal risk, normal risk, high risk, which will be healthcare data, and then acceptable risk. Unacceptable risk is real time. Oh, sorry. I lost some people there. So taking it further, is of course, then we get our algorithm in place, and that's great. But this is where I see the risk, is when we get our algorithm. And also there are a number of, a tsunami of commercial algorithms coming in. And here is the point where it can go wrong, because you need for your system to have a setup to validate the algorithm for your population. not only when you implement it, but continuously, because there will be a drift. So what worked great today might not work 5 years later. And if you don't do that, you will run into problems. So this is where you should focus. Then what we had earlier on the sepsis algorithm put a lot on emphasis on the interface to the user. So they really understand the prediction. So it could be in form of generative AI, it could be explanatory AI, it could be AI on AI if I have complex neural networks, but that's also a job to be done. I was just in Canada and saw how they did. They had the concept of champion, where they actually brought one of the users into the developmental work, and that made the implementation much easier, but also the development of the interface. And this is the AI healthcare map of the world. And as you see, the dark space is where it's most advanced, and the little bit darker blue in Southeast Asia and Oceania is where it's going quickest. And this is where Europe is lagging. And has anyone here read the Draghi report? Draghi was the former prime minister of Italy and was then one of members of the EU. He was a commissioner of EU, and he was given the task of assessing Europe's future when it comes to being competitive. And if you haven't read it and you want to read the report, be sure you load yourself up with SSRI inhibitors, because it's a very depressing reading. It's we are losing it on all accounts, all types of industries, and life science is one of the worst actually. And this is actually been taken into the conclusion. So there is now an omnibus program that focuses on the regulatory part, how we can regain territory by modifying our regulations. I can just give one example from these two projects we had. This is the timeline of the projects, and as you see, data science, that's where we did the algorithm, just a few weeks at the end. The rest is regulatory. And we need to get away from that, because there is an alternative risk, which is never discussed. In US, that was the first assessment you did. What can we gain? What patients will be winning, and what will they win with this algorithm? And if that's little, you don't walk that path. But if that's potentially huge, you will bring that through all the regulatory discussions. This is what we potentially lose. So one could say then, it was not fun to listen to Stefan. I don't think we have a future, but I think we have. So what has been really inhibitory here has been the actual way we use GDPR, but there are several steps. EHDS, well, it's not an option. Actually, I had to give my points, or the train consortia's points on the EHDS Act, and one thing that we had to feed back on it was what would be the penalty if you don't follow the EHDS Act. What do we think around that? And the penalty if you do if you share data in a careless way, but also the penalty if you're obstructive. So the EHDS is going to be enforced. So if you don't share data, it's not only if you don't share data, but if you are slow in sharing your data, there will be a penalty for you. And then we have the AI Act, as I talked, and the digital omnibus, which has only the focus on increasing the availability of data. So the future is looking bright. So the journey we need to do is from being immature. I would say that all health systems have contact with AI. Some don't really understand that they are working with AI in their diagnostic algorithms. But then, of course, most are in an exploratory phase where they're isolated AI projects. And we need to take it further. And to take it further, we need to get access to the complete data, not only the image data, but a complete data set, and not organize the data, because you don't know 10 years down the road what you will need from the data. So by organizing a data lake which is agnostic and organize the data when you actually harvest your lake rather than put the data in the lake, that's what we are doing at least right now. And that makes it possible to make large dashboards and put AI management in a larger context. For instance, there are people out there with a 50% risk within the next 5 years to get a stroke. They have some encounters with healthcare at different points, but we don't catch them. If you have a complete data set, you can do that. And the final way of going is you go all in, that you have all data transferred and in control of all your data, and you don't need patient's consent. These are pseudonymized. That's the trip we need to take to the very end. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. I don't know if there's one last question or comment before we moving to the panel. Else, Stefan, he also joined the panel debate. Yes.
I think I can be loud enough.
It's for the online.
Tokenization, do you think that'll ever be possible within Europe under the GDPR connectivity legislation?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
So you think that pseudonymization will eventually be allowed?
Yes. And we have it now. You can, and the omnibus program is actually in reaction. So there are already regulations coming out of the omnibus program, and such a regulation comes with the first sentence in the Draghi report, and and this is where I think we realize that our patients hurted by the strictness of how we keep our data right now. I mean, as a clinician, I do all the time. One thing you get as a clinician when you have been working in thoracic intensive care for 30 years is you get better, but you get better by seeing the rare cases with rare outcomes, and you actually get the understanding for those. And of course, I could say when I see such a rare outcome, I could say, I know what works best here, but I got that from another patient. I cannot use that on you. I will start from the beginning. We would never say that. And that's with our data sets too, that we should be allowed to use the data set in the benefit of our incoming patients. Yeah.
Yeah. One quick question. You talk about data sets and all the clinicians, they have lots of data, but they're not curated.
Yeah.
It's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
How would you support the clinics to curate their data? Because for the 30 years in the past, nobody did that. But now it's really valuable. And if you put AI on non-curated data,
Yeah.
garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's a main topic we need to solve.
In Sweden, it's somewhat easier where we are in control of the clinician. Even the private practitioners have, if they're connected to the insurance system, they need to use the same EMR, and that's helpful. But when working with this in US, that was a complete mess. I mean, yeah. What? So I limited our data lake to our system. That was 16 hospitals in the West Michigan. But it's not possible to do any larger in the United States. And it's a competitive healthcare system. They really don't want to work like that. Absolutely. I think that in the long end, we are, especially in healthcare, there is no way that we should lose it to US in the sense in the long run, because they have so big problems to address.
Thank you, Stefan. Very inspiring speech here. I was thinking that you showed us the amount and you have your experience from the US and they're using a lot of money into AI, but their life expectancy is lower than the whole of Europe. So it's something different there. So my question to you is more, do you think that AI would have the biggest role in the prevention? And in that case, who should take care of the prevention? Because I think we in healthcare, we're only interested in sick things, not in healthy things.
I think definitely precision prevention will be the future, which will unburden us a lot in healthcare. And we have a precision center called Precision Center South, where we actually have developed whole genome sequencing is typically a development that shows that the new technologies will help us save money and will become cheaper. At the turn of the millennium, it costed $100 million to sequence one individual. Now we're down to a couple of tens of euros for the technique. Then if you send us samples, we will charge you 1,500 euro, but that's okay. That's quite low. And now we have developed a technique where we can bring it down to 500 euro. And in that sense, we will be able to actually bypass all these problems with the risk individuals, which we are now not allowed to scan through the records. That we actually, when you go to the family practitioners and we have all your clinical open risks, and together with your whole genome sequencing, we will see, even if you had a myocardial infarction, maybe you shouldn't have a statin. And maybe even if you didn't have a myocardial infarction, you should have a statin.
Great, thank you. Thank you again, Stefan. It sounds like the discussion is already starting, so I think that's a perfect time to go over to the panel debate. So Stefan, he will stay, and I'll ask Erik and Kalle also to join, and then Marianne and Valerie as well. So Janus, the floor is yours.
So, good afternoon, or actually it's not afternoon yet, but it will be soon in 6 minutes. Yeah, I had an honorable position here to actually lead this conversation, and we have had good pre-panel meetings with our panelists, so we have been prepared a bit. But to start with, I would just was thinking that this project was starting when we didn't have this marvelous tools, LLMs. It was 4 years ago, or even more, when we actually incepted this and started to prepare for this project. And if we look what has happened during these 4 years, then today we might say also that would it be possible to reach to this tool and this type of results just in maybe in half a day, if you ask a GTP5 and to do this. And especially if you hear what Sam Alpen is actually stating that how capable it is, and that perhaps next year already they could actually implement ChatGPT just to develop ChatGPT to next version. That they don't need anymore such a huge number of engineers and developers and stuff in the ChatGPT and OpenAI itself. So yeah, this might be interesting. Is it just to develop these tools and this type of support structures, or is it about implementation and it's about bringing society along? So this is a question, and that's why I would like to ask the first question, maybe Marianne and Valerie, about the partnership. So what is important and most important as in this journey, what you have actually now started about partnership, joint strategies? Maybe, Marianne, would you like to start?
I think there's a number of things that we need to look into for the partnerships. First of all, I mean, most of us have not yet experienced the full implementation of those algorithms. And I think one of the reasons is that we need to have a lot of more professions at the same table. So some of the algorithms are built by private companies, some are built by public partners, but the main thing I think is that we need to have public-private partnerships together. We need to have the IT department at the very beginning. We need to have the legal departments involved at the very beginning. So bringing all the different partners together from the beginning, I think, is one of the things that we need to look into.
Valerie, do you want to add something?
No, I think it's true. There is also different steps in the development of the project. At the beginning, like Marianne say, you need a lot of internal backup, but you need also to build some of the success story for having the change management. I think before there were an illustration, you need to have the first success history to make the management to want to have those solutions and to prove them actually that they are bringing some value. So we need to be better also to bring some of the results to convince other people that we are really contributing to make a change in the sector.
Kalle, you had quite a sort of practical example. What is your experience?
Yes, so maybe if we like take one step backwards and look at from like society-wide, AI development has a lot of stages from like foundational AI research to researching data for a specific algorithm like language models and then implementing them to practice. Of course, a public service provider cannot have in their core business all of these parts. So we have to focus on what is the core business. We can provide the at least the clinical insight into research, probably some technical parts as well, but that's not the core thing. We will, at least in our district, we don't do any coding ourselves. We buy that from as a service, and let's say the private sector itself cannot probably meet all our needs without our input either. So it has to be a partnership, right?
Thank you. Eric, do you have anything to add here? It's in your case.
Sure. I think that there are some challenges in implementing and convincing people to implement this new kind of technology, but on the same time, there is a surge urgency, and the healthcare system is such in a tense state that there are opportunities for this manager to think about these new tools as a way to support the healthcare professional that have to do clinical work with 20% of vacancy in their staffing. So such tools may help healthcare professionals to be more resilient and to try to keep forward in keeping up the healthcare in a very stressed healthcare system. At least I speak for my country.
Stefano.
No, I think we need as providers to make a journey to optimize this partnership. So I often get the question, so what do you see? What technical developments do you need? As I said, we are, of course, there will be technical development. I'm looking forward to that, but we need to develop our regulatory landscape within the organizations as well, because that's very frustrating for our partners when they come with full enthusiasm in and 2 years down the road, the final decision hasn't been made. So we should focus on who is going to decide and how is that decision. Our model we are developing now is to actually take standard cases through with different integrity issues and have them pre-processed. So when the issue comes in, we don't need to take that, those paths are already taken. Things like that is, I think we need to do.
Yes, Marianne?
Sorry.
Add something?
I just want to continue that we should also reinforce the collaboration between the different public sector entities as well, so that we go in the same way and approach things the same way.
And if I should add to that, because I really agree on that, and I think the whole AI governance is also a really big issue here, that we need to have our politicians, but also our leaders to actually make the governance so that we can make good public-private partnerships and stuff like that. So.
Anything else?
I would like also to mention that the partnership is one thing, but the route for implementation is still very complicated. And it's also a part which will require economy. And it's very difficult to find the economy for reaching those steps. So we all make a lot of very good pilot project testing and this kind of thing, but the final implementation is still very difficult to reach. And we really need to have a focus on that. And that's where also, again, I think the management is important, because they are maybe the only one to be able to support that phase moving forward.
Yes, we had a discussion in August where Thomas made a presentation, and there was also CAIDX project conference where we actually discussed this implementation especially. And we see that it's improving. At the beginning of the year, at least, there was some data that there was more than 1,000 already certified AI tools out, but only a couple of percentage was actually implemented in real life. I think by August it was already close to some teens, but it's easy part, I think, because it's mostly imaging diagnostics based. But now we are going to much more complicated endeavor, well, because this is just imaging. But if you go to the more different diagnostic AI-based solutions, I think there is much more data integrity. So we will see much more need for actually change management, because parties are much more involved. But as Stefan already mentioned, regulatory. So I think this is already known that Commission is actually embarked to actually revise requirements and of MDR at least and the AI Act. So hopefully it will be something will be come out and overhanded to the Parliament maybe early next year. So we will see what it actually includes. But what is your take here? What Stefan already somehow you touched upon this, but what is the most important? What we should just and the urgent steps to be competitive, to be changed in our regulations. Can you start with?
Of course, I would very much favor the American model that you own the connection to your data, but you don't own the data itself. That we need to get a switch towards that. I'm very optimistic. The MedTech Act is going to be closed for input in March, and then we have the Omnibus program and digital Omnibus program. That will be the most important part, so we can open. EHDS take us quite far, as its basic format. It's based on opt-out, not opt-in. But every country there is an open door. So Germany could decide that, I take Germany as an example because they have been most conservative. They could decide that you need opt-in, and that would completely put. If a country takes that decision, it will put them off track development for a long time. So hopefully it's going to go through with only opt-out. Actually, I don't think you need opt-out either, because if you pseudonymize the data and so on, I mean, our carrier industry process a lot of data without any questions asked, just to make airplanes or flights safer. And I think we need to make healthcare safer, not only for those in hospitals, but those at home not knowing about all the risks.
Eric, I know that during the discussions and preparatory process of the European Health Data Space regulation, there was also quite a bit of sort of concerns from France, from medical ethicists, that we need opt-in sort of regulation. What is the situation you feel now in France?
So I'm quite in line to what the other speaker said in the previous time, because actually in France, it's way more easier to do a randomized control trial comparing two different kind of drugs than doing a retrospective multi-center observational study. Maybe sounds crazy or exaggerated, but it's true. It's way more easier, and there are issues with that. The issue is that we totally understand that it's important to have a framework to how to deal with healthcare data, to be safe in handling them. Totally get it. But actually today in France, it's so complicated to make this multi-center retrospective analysis that most of the people can't do it. And so we don't have actual real-time observational data from all patients to compare the guidelines or the AI tools we get from other continents. And maybe the external validity is not so good with these external validated tools, and we are lacking some of the data we would need to challenge and to make our self-design tools. And also, I'm totally agrees on the fact that there are risks of data leak with handling the data, the retrospective data, and we know some techniques to reduce this risk. But there also are risks of not having medical innovation for all patients in Europe, and to only rely on data that are trained and derived in other continents with other healthcare systems. And so the external validity and the performance and the risk may not be the same. So there are risks on both parts of this difficult question of where to set the cursor.
What I usually say to politicians also, okay, let's say that Sweden wants to play safe, just safe in the way doing usual business. But the development happens in North America and happens in Australia, and the results will surface anyway. And then you will be standing with a long face saying, trying to explain to the people, why did the Swedish population or the European population, why did they not get access to this? So you cannot escape the development here. You have to be part of it.
Well, I agree on this problem, because I think it's easy for us to test algorithms within our own region, but as soon as we want to go to other hospitals or even across borders, then it's really a problem. And I think we need to look into this area and actually make a common European or even common in general regulation guideline to succeed in this.
I agree that EHDS saves lives. If we get data and can train things on Europe-wide data, we get better results. Of course, we have to, and I'm not qualified to judge it, that we have to assure that the information security and everything is at an acceptable level. Again, as Stefan said in the good previous talk, that it's about risk, and we have to manage risk always. Maybe in some parts we have to also have the courage in this, that a public official is not very the risk appetite is not very big. It's hard. Yes. Yes, by definition, there's not much incentive to take risk. But we have to be comfortable with it, and it's a good thing that the regulation is risk-based, that we have to put the risk forward and evaluate it. Yes.
So 30%, you can charge the politician and then the official people with saying that now we have the tools that will detect 30% more breast cancers, would you really want to be responsible for that over risk? And then they back off. So that's actually the reason of doing POCs. It's not only to show that this algorithm works, it's actually to calculate the alternative risk and present it to the decision makers.
And on the other hand, the regulation that's like we have the enabling regulation, as we also have this like hindering regulation, but it's also from the perspective of purchasing something. It's good that you have some assurances that this is certified medical device. I can trust that if I buy this, it works. So yeah, good size to both.
Yeah, I would just like to add that the regulation, they are also here to bring trust in the product we are developing and we are introducing both for the professional, but also for our patient. My little worry is many of the device we are working today, they are also medical device. So you have already a heavy regulation there that just is beginning to find its way. The notified body begins a little bit more to be active. It was very difficult in the beginning because there was not that many that were available. And now we are adding another layer of documentation, expectation and this kind of thing. And it can be also a risk to kill also the motivation for the company or for the people like you who are trying to develop new solutions. So I think the infrastructure is important, but we also need a layer of simplification, not adding more regulation to existing regulation already.
Yeah, so this is absolutely true. Although, well, the notified bodies seem to be more eager to do, like I had a discussion this week with one of the notified bodies, and of course they presented quite, but they said at the same time, yeah, there will be obviously change in MDR, and let's see what it will, next year will bring. Because otherwise it's so heavy burden, especially in the small companies if they want to start. So we calculated that it's at least for first 5 years was like 200,000 euros, 200,000 euros to spend. And if you don't have revenue, so it takes at least 18 months to perform. So with this development, what we have now out with new general AI, I don't think we can keep in the competition if we actually continue like this. But as there are always risks, we should also discuss the risks which we are posing now, which is in automotive bias. How we face this against the human judgment and how to balance this. I don't know who wants to take a lead, Kalle.
Sure. How do we? Well, let's say as we move more and more into like AI using society, we will come across some ethical questions, and we have to have some kind of an answer to them. And it's not so easy to say that, like, what even is the final objective of healthcare and wellness, and who is happy and who is healthy. At some point, we have to like involve some philosophers into this question as well. But bias is insidious because it's in the data, and if we don't, let's say we leave all of this large language model development up to the Americans, it will be an American bias model, and it might not be something that we agree on. So if Europe does not have an influence to this, we will have to live with the results then. That's, I guess, one side of the issue.
So, else want to add here?
Bias is a complex issue, and of course the selection bias is one key thing, for instance, when it comes to consent, but it's also societal bias. So we have some patients or some individual in our societies are being discriminated against.
and they tend to be clustered. So if you build in, for instance, zip codes in your algorithms, that's going to take the societal bias into your. So it is a complex issue, and when you build your algorithms, you have to put that into perspective too. But you have to start with complete data sets and reduce the forbidden data as much as possible, and focus on the protection of the individual rather than the consent.
Would I just have an additional question about the data and the synthetic data? If you just generated synthetic data and that is already biased, would you amplify this bias?
Yeah, depends on how you. I'm not a huge fan of synthetic data. There are several reasons. One reason is, of course, that it builds on. If it's going to work, especially on genomic data, it needs to fast your data a bit. That means you lose some power on it. But also, if you, let's say, have a supercomputer try to find out the individual, you can actually find the wrong individual and point towards them. So the protection of the individual is questionable even for synthetic data. And you always will come to the point that will you really go into full impact mode only based on synthetic data? I wouldn't. So I think many people will, or some people will disagree that synthetic data drags a lot of effort and at the end will be a detour. You get quicker into the data in the beginning, but you will lose on time on impact because you will need to take it to real data anyway.
And let's discuss decision bias. Maybe if we start to automate processes, a doctor will make a human decision at some point, and that decision might be also as well biased. The training data for the human doctor might be biased. So at some point we have to ask, does the human make a better decision than the AI system? And well, we have examples like chess and other easier parts that computers beat humans single-handedly. I suppose that this trend will continue, and at some point we have to be able to be comfortable with giving more power to the algorithm.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Just to point it out clearly is that generally when people criticize AI, they criticize, they focus on the difference between perfect and the performance of the AI. You can do that, but I think the most interesting is the difference between the AI and the human intelligence. If it's a major leap forward, it's still a better choice than waiting for the perfect AI, because that's almost never going to happen. So don't compare with perfect. If it has a 80% prediction and humans have 20% prediction accuracy, it's still better. And you should go that way.
Should build that maybe, but then we reach the ethical questions, I suppose, that do we value the fact that there is a human thinking about it who can take maybe some unforeseen things into account, and what are we comfortable with? I don't have any answer to that.
Don't have right now. We are not comfortable with not having a human in the loop, even if it happens. I know there is a project in London where they have two urgent number, one for serious emergency event, that's 112, and then they have another number where you need urgent care but not life-threatening, and they have an algorithm for sorting the patients on that based on the call, and that has worked out nicely. But we are not ready for at least in our system. For instance, for the mammography, is still one radiologist and the algorithm doing together, and we have this ambient script, which is a microphone in the room where the doctor speaks to the patient, and then when the conversation is over, it summarizes the record, the referrals, everything, does everything that the doctor needs to do, but nothing is submitted. Still, the physician has to press the button, okay, and that's the way to go for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so that takes us actually to the question that what will be the future longer term, where we actually going to rely more and more on the sort of AI and the computer decisions, automated decisions. But somebody is now overseeing this, as Stefan said, that it's in the foreseeable future. But if more and more and most of the decisions and processes will be guided by machines, how about who can make the decisions in the longer run? Because if people will cease to make decisions, then they cease to learn and get practice. So my question would be how you would see, because Sam Altman also telling that, well, better way to the now college students is to drop out and go and actually work with AI and develop their own companies, but where you get actually the knowledge to make the decisions and to curate the machines. So what you would see, what it led. So because we know already that today the new generation of surgeons are not able mainly usually to do the open surgery if there is a complication, because they are perfect in manipulating the joysticks, but not to go to the old type surgery. So, and maybe it's even more wider question about the educational system. So maybe a short tour around the table, because we have only a couple of minutes now.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm the right way to start, but I would say, yeah, education, of course, it's important, and having all the medicine specialty trained to use AI, I think it's actually the most important, because what we see when it comes something, when you move activities from the doctors to the nurse, for example, they are not always trained to use those new tools, and it's really an issue, and also maybe for the patient. There is a part of equality when we introduce AI, maybe because it's more affordable and you can have the long distance monitoring, but it's not every patient who are able to follow up with the technological development. So there is some education issues there as well.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to predict what is the limit of the current generation of AI research. That is there a stagnation at some point, or is there an exponential growth or anything? So it's hard to predict what will happen in 5 years in this space. But of course we have to be aware of this and keep up with it. And even if the technology gains from here are incremental, we can still implement a lot from just using the current technology. So that there will be some change in the practice already. At this point, I don't suppose we will replace medical professors with AIs. But maybe if it's good enough, maybe why not? You ask who teaches that, who learns how to make the decisions. Maybe the AI will teach us then, if it's that good.
Well, I think, first of all, of course, I agree on that education on how to use the AI models is really, really important. But I also think we have to remember that, at least for some of the models, it is decision support. So the doctors are still the ones in charge. They're still the ones who needs to make the decision in the long run. So the models is not going to take over. I think it's still the doctors or the nurses, whoever use it, but it's going to be a support tool.
So I have no information to predict the future, but I can say what I hope. I really hope as a healthcare professional that AI technology, for example, like LLM for making clinical diagnosis, will be a tool for the healthcare professional to help them be more efficient. But it's not a way, in my opinion, to replace or to reduce the number of healthcare professionals, keeping in the line of the diagnosis with LLM. So there are some data comparing real humans with LLM-based diagnosis, and some publication show that it's at least as performant, especially when you combine clinicians and LLM for making some internal medicine diagnosis. But if you go to the publication and the methodology in this studies, the LLM were facing a clinical vignette. I'm referring to a study where they used the New England Journal of Medicine clinical vignette. But this clinical vignette, it's not real life medicine. And the whole part of a healthcare professional is to interact with the patient, look at him, examine him, making him questions, and then building up this medical vignette. Then once you have this medical vignette, you may help yourself with LLM to improve the performance of your diagnosis. But it's really, I think, a mistake to reduce the healthcare art of making a diagnosis to just analysis in clinical vignette. Building this medical vignette is highly sophisticated. It requires experiments, knowledge that we learn in medical school. And I don't see in the near future an automatization of this part of the medical art.
No, I would say there are risks, for instance, surgical techniques and so on. But the solution is, of course, not to stop development, but actually being more selective and centralize rare events as we do with the national highly specialized healthcare, so that you still have the skills under fewer surgeons, things like that. But the big advantage is to handle complex data. For instance, an oncology conference of today, you have the patient looking at the patient. Maybe you have a sequencing of the tumor, you have some slides, pathological slides, and you make up multidisciplinary what is best for this patient. And when you decided the case is closed, and you go on. But with AI, you can actually compile that experience. So next time patients come up with a similar profile, you can get a comparison to what happened to patients in a much more complex way and today. And to put it into my business, when I was a young student, the professors told about their professors who could estimate the ejection volume just with a stethoscope, and no one can do that today. But we have a far more accurate measure through echocardiography. We can do it ourselves, we can evaluate it. So it's still a leap forward, even if it would be very elegant of me to put a stethoscope and say, you have this ejection volume. So there is a risk, but we shouldn't be sentimental about it.
Thank you very much. I think with this positive note that still the medical professionals are needed, we can actually go to the Q&A session, and I think that was time is over. Yeah. Oh, then I thank you and give over to Karina. So thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah, but if there's emergent questions, we might can have one or two, but else the time is there's two here. So let us take those two.
I maybe have a provocative one. So we all try to secure data and make it safe. So and we forgot about questioning why we do that. We do that because we would like to prevent misusage of that. So it's an illusion that we can, let's say, protect the data to the utmost extent. There was an experiment in New York where some artist grabbed your coffee cup, took some pieces together, sequenced you, reconstructed your face, making your face visible just from grabbing that, and that will increase in future times. So why, and that's just a question, we have no answer to that, but why not thinking about, let's say, lowering a little bit this data protection thing and increasing the punishment of the misusage. And AI would help us in order to do so. So that would be a totally different approach. And I could mimic that also for turning today's disease care into the real health care, including prevention. So that's just as food for thought from my side.
And my comment to that is, I think there is a gross mass misuse of the data today because it's not being used to protect patients. That's even more serious.
Well, maybe the other extreme is that we release all data to the public and all AIs to the public, and I think there are actual risks to that because there are bad people in the world still, and you can make bioweapons or something tailored to the genes or something. Of course, there's always a balance. But yes, I think the opportunity cost should be always considered in these like trusted environments.
And there are several cases of EMR leaking to the dark web, sometimes to the open web. So our current system, which is much less safe than the pseudonymized data lakes, are already provided that risk. There was in Åbo this psychological care unit, which it came to open web. The Sophia Hemmet in Stockholm, which is a private hospital, which doesn't take care of people like you and me, the king and the queen and so on. They lost 60,000 medical records to the dark web. So there is no, and that's actually a good comparison, is that you get the question, if I am the patient, I don't want AI to be part of my care, can I choose it? No, you can't. It's part of development. You cannot come into our doctor's office and say, I would like to have my record on paper. That's not an option either. We are moving forward and you have to follow.
So the last is the very best, right?
Always.
Yeah. So I'm the last thing between you and lunch, right? First of all, I want to congratulate Scandinavia because you guys are much more further along with this data harmonization. And I think you've gotten actually a lot of things kind of grandfathered, and I'm very impressed with what you've done, as well as Strasbourg. My question is how you are today part of Norway. Let's call you Norway. How about that? My question is about how we can start doing this across borders, because the challenge we have, and I think the examples you have are very good within country, where you've been able to obviously bring things together. But healthcare is obviously very much so of a cross-border issue. You get into one of the presentations about elderly, you get into Alzheimer's, dementia, and obviously other chronic diseases, and those know no borders. So how can we obviously actually start doing data sharing across borders to really enable better insights? I come from Basel. That's not my accent. But we have 30,000 people coming in every day from either Germany or France. And so healthcare, although it's paid by Roche and Novartis or Janssen, is then in France or Germany, and we have no connectivity to it. So it's a big challenge because people are mobile. And that's part of this thing, especially with Germany, with the number of borders, is that healthcare doesn't stop just because of a sole polizei.
What a wonderful commercial for EHDS.
Thank you for that one, and give them all a applause for the panel. Yes. Yeah. So I think that was a good ending, and then I will ask Lars to give the final closing remarks before we have lunch.
I will try to be quick. Thank you for today, and especially thank you for the panel. I thank you, Stefan. Next time I meet a cardiologist, I will not ask him, what did you see? I will ask him, what did you hear? And also thank you for the last question you put up, Janos, about education. Therefore, I put up this image of the School of Athens. And I think the same is always around us here. And in a way, I love the word art in artificial. because it means that we can have different perspectives of what we are looking at, and we try to understand what it actually means. So to give you something to think about over lunch was, I've been thinking a lot and been engaged in the development of AI in Sweden. I was starting AI Sweden in Gothenburg and so on. And at the first time I said to my clinicians, you know that AI actually stands for additional information. And they were happy because okay, we know how to handle information. If I don't interested, I don't care. And then I realized after a while that AI might also stand for augmented information. And then it starts to be a little bit complicated for me in my profession, because then I know things I shouldn't know about, and I need to make some decisions about it. It's like being a father in a family and so on. You know too much about it. And this is an interesting approach when you start to think about augmented information. And the last thing, as we were touching in the panel and your question also, is that I think that AI can stand for augmented influencers. And then it starts to be really complicated, because I would love to be an augmented influencers, because what I'm thinking is the right, but who the hell isn't thinking that? So with that said, I think that what I bring back home from this event from CAIDX is that you have started to give us the tools. And remember that we need the tools. We are leaving, you know, the idle word and pointing towards something real. And it's when we start to have different tools, we can build different things. And that's also what is illustrated on this. I think you can hit one more. Nope, go back. We lost it. But the School of Athens is actually showing us that everybody has a part of this. Everybody has a part of this. I love Pythagoras here. He's sitting there and saying, I think I can find an algorithm that can explain everything. And then we have other philosophic guys there that is saying, well, I just enjoy life. I just want to be happy. So therefore, it's so important for us to have different tools to build different worlds. And I also think that we sometimes forget and think that if we just use AI, we will always find the truth. But remember also that we have something we call X-formation, the things we create as humans, as who we are, what we have, our culture and all these things. So sometimes I used to joke to doctors and say, you talk about the full genomics, and I prefer to look at the postage number, and I probably know more about the patient from the postage number. So remember, humans need humans to become humans. So with that, thank you for a fantastic day.
Thank you, Lars, and thank you for giving food to our brains before we get into our stomach. So it's time for lunch now. I just want to say thank you to all of you present here and also online, and to all the speakers and panelists. I've just put the QR code for our website for the toolbox that Laura and Ida showed before. But thank you very much, and have a nice day.